when the eastern horizon became tinged with the redness that heralds the rising of the sun, the jewel among the Brahmins, Lord Ghorasundar, immediately awakened, taking his devotees with him. He journeyed through the towns and villages of Nadia. The mridangas resounded, tat-tai, tat-tai, and the jhajas played in time. Lord Gauranga's golden form slightly trembled in ecstatic love of Godhead, and his footbells tingled. Lord Chaitanya called out to the townsfolk, "You spend your nights uselessly sleeping and your days decorating your bodies. Now just fill your mouths with the holy names Mukunda, Madhava, Yadava, and Hari, chanting without offense. You have achieved this rare human body. Don't you care for this gift? If you do not worship the darling of Yashoda now, then great sorrow awaits you at the time of your death. With every rising and setting of the sun, a day passes and is lost. Why then do you remain idle and not serve the Lord of the heart? You should understand this essential fact. Life is temporary and various kinds of miseries. Therefore, carefully take shelter of the holy name and remain always engaged in his service as your eternal occupation. Desiring to bless the living entities, this sweet name of Krishna has descended to this material universe and shines like the sun in the sky of the heart, destroying the darkness of ignorance. Drink the pure nectar of the holy name of Krishna and thus satisfy the soul of Thakur Bhakti Vinod. There is nothing except the holy name within the 14 worlds. Lord Gauranga calls, "Wake up, sleeping souls, wake up, sleeping souls. You have slept so long in the lap of the witch Maya. You came into this world saying, 'Oh my Lord, I certainly will worship you,' but having forgotten this promise, you have remained in great ignorance. I have descended just to save you. Other than myself, who else is your friend? I have brought this medicine for destroying the illusion of Maya. Now pray for this Harinam, Maha mantra, and take it." Thakur Bhaktivinoda fell at the feet of Lord Gauranga, and after begging for the holy name, he received that Maha mantra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki. So, today is the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. People are confused. What is God? Whether God's some impersonal concept. They all agree that he's controller. God controls things. Those who believe in God. Those who don't believe in God deny his existence. They think that nature is everything. That life came about by a combination of chemicals and it evolved. But Srila Prabhupada used to say, if you believe in nature, Mother Nature, then what about the Father? Is there any concept of mother without father? As soon as you say mother, Mother Nature, it means there was a father. Isn't it? You ever have experience of mother but there was no father? So, this idea that everything came from nature is false. We understand that along with nature, there's the controller of nature. As Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, Mayad Yati, I'm the controller of this material nature. It works under my direction. And that same personality that's referred to by all the acharyas. Srila Vyasadeva, Lord Brahma, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Yadadhiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna. Again, he manifested himself 500 years ago, as he manifested himself 5,000 years ago, and he spoke the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, the message was, just surrender unto me. Just surrender unto me. But somehow, people didn't get the message. They didn't get the message. If you look at all the translations of Bhagavad Gita, they're saying so many things, but they're not saying surrender to Krishna. They didn't get the message. People are not surrendering to Krishna. They're surrendering to so many other things. Right? So Krishna appeared again 500 years ago, a little over 500 years ago. But this time, not openly as a Supreme Lord, like in his other incarnations. In other yugas, he came sometimes in the form of a boar, sometimes as half man, half lion. In the form of a man, Lord Ramchandra, and as Krishna, Lila Purushottam. In all these forms, he killed the demons, saved the devotees. But the Lord is also known as Tri-Yuga Avatar. He only comes in 3 yugas: Satyuga, Dvarpara Yuga, Treta Yuga. But it says he doesn't appear in Kali Yuga. He doesn't appear in Kali Yuga because he appears in a hidden form. Chana Avatar. He's covered. Why? Because the Supreme Lord comes as his devotee. He comes in the guise of a devotee to teach the people how to surrender to Krishna. He's Krishna himself. But because people didn't get the message of Bhagavad Gita, he himself came to teach the meaning of Bhagavad Gita and the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he appeared as the son of Mother Sachi and Jagannath Mishra in Navadvip. Jagannath Mishra was residing there. He had moved from his original place to Nadia because it was the seat of learning. And there he married Sachimata, the daughter of Nilambar Chakravarti, and he had many daughters, but those daughters died when they were young, and ultimately he had 2 sons, Vishvarup and Vishvambar. So they became the center of their affection. And later on, Lord Chaitanya's older brother Vishvarup, he left and took sannyas. And Sri Chaitanya, who at that time was called Nimai. Nimai because he was born on a neem tree. And he was known as Nimai Pandit because he was very learned. In fact, when he was only 16 years old, he started his own school and he was teaching others. Sanskrit. In those days, school meant Sanskrit. Today, school means so many nonsense things, but in those days, school meant Sanskrit. That is the classical way of learning. You learn Vyakaran. grammar. And in that way you learn everything. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a method of teaching Sanskrit Vyakaran through the name of the holy name of Krishna. So they would learn the grammar of Sanskrit by hearing the names of Krishna. Later on, Jiva Goswami made a book. What's the name? Harinam Vyakaran. Huh? Say again? Namamrita Vyakaran. It means learning Sanskrit grammar through the holy name. So, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was living in Navadvip, he was, when he was very young, he was very naughty. He used to go to the Ganga when the girls were worshipping Lord Ganga, or for having nice husbands. So Lord Chaitanya would joke with them and say, all these offerings you offer to me. Right? If you offer all these things to me, I'll make sure that you all have nice husbands. And if you don't offer, I'll make sure you have husbands that had 7 co-wives. So they would offer their offerings to Lord Chaitanya. Some out of affection and some out of fear. When the Brahmins were saying their Gayatri in the Ganga, he would go and pull their legs from underwater. He would go underwater and pull their legs. All these things are, his childhood pastimes are nicely described by Vrindavan Das Thakur in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Later on we have the teachings of Chaitanya Charitamrita. In Chaitanya Charitamrita all the teachings are explained by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj. There were actually many books written by the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about his pastimes. So many. Lochandas Thakur, so many. But the main ones are the notes of Swarup Damodar and Murari Gupta. Murari Gupta was a physician in Navadvip and very much attached to Lord Chaitanya. So his notes were there. His diary is there of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was born during the lunar eclipse. And as custom, during the eclipse, people would go to a body of water and they would chant the holy name, because the eclipse of the moon is considered to be inauspicious. So they would go to a holy river, a holy body of water, and there they would chant the name. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared on the full moon night of Falguni, people all over India were chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So this indicated the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he would spread the holy name, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was a small child, they saw that if the Lord was crying, if someone began to chant the holy name, he would stop crying. So all the village ladies would come and they would kind of make him cry and then chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And he would become pacified. So Nimai Pandit, as he was known in Navadvip, was very learned, and if anybody tried to argue with them, he would defeat them. There were many Pandits, but they didn't try to argue with or discuss with Nimai Pandit because he was so expert. He could defeat anyone. They'd have one argument and he would defeat it. And then he would take their argument and defeat them again with their own argument. He was so learned. But people were just amazed. And one time, Keshav Kashmiri, he came to Navadvip because he had heard there are many learned scholars, and he was famous for defeating learned scholars. And the system was in those days, if you were defeated by a scholar, you became their disciple, their servant. So the Navadvip scholars, they thought, okay, let the boy Nimai go, and if he doesn't defeat him, then we'll see what to do. Right? They were thinking like that. But by chance, before such an argument or discussion was arranged, the Keshav Kashmiri met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the Ganga. Mahaprabhu spent a lot of time at the Ganga, playing with his friends, swimming, bathing in the Ganga. Masti kam kartata. So there he met Keshav Kashmiri. And Mahaprabhu requested him, can you recite some verse glorifying Mother Ganga? So the Keshav Kashmiri was so expert. He recited 100 verses glorifying Mother Ganga. Just like that, with like lightning. One after another. Verses. And after he recited all the verses, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, that's very nice. But in the 24th verse, you said, and he cited the verse, and he cited the mistake that was there in the verse. And Keshav Kashmiri was amazed. Not only in that verse, but in many other verses, he explained how the alliteration in the verse was wrong in a very detailed way, pointed out the mistakes. So he was wondering, how could this boy even remember? I recited those verses like the wind. But not only he remembered the verse, he pointed out the mistake. And Keshav Kashmiri was defeated. He couldn't argue with this boy then. So he went back. And in the night, he was feeling deserted by his Istadevata, Mother Saraswati. And she appeared to him in a dream. And she said, the person today that you met with, I'm his servant. I'm his servant, Dasi. You should surrender unto him. So when he woke, he went and found Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he offered obeisances, and he became surrendered unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Once when he was a small boy, he was playing in the garden, and there was a snake, a very big poisonous snake there. And Mother Sachi didn't know what to do. She was beside herself with fear. And the small boy was just playing. The snake was there. He was there. He wasn't afraid. And after some time, the snake, he just quietly went away. So these are some of the pastimes of Nimai Pandit in his childhood that filled the inhabitants of Navadvip with such ecstasy. One time when he was a small boy, a thief came, because they used to decorate him with some jewels, nice jewelry, valuable jewelry. So the thief thought, I'll just take this boy off to a distant place and take his jewelry. Right? So the thief took him. Children, they're easy to convince. I'll give you a piece of candy. Come. So he put him on his shoulder and he was going. And he was wandering around and around. He got lost. He was looking for some place where people wouldn't see, and he'd take the jewelry and go. But it turned up he was right in front of Jagannath Mishra's house. And then he became afraid he'll be caught, so he put the child down and he ran. So, the Lord, after some time, he married Vishnu Priya, and she died, young age. And right about the same time that he met his spiritual master, Ishwar Puri, his mother insisted that he marry again. So he married Lakshmi Priya, Vishnu Priya. First wife was Lakshmi Priya, second Vishnu Priya. But that time after his initiation, he became filled with great ecstasy of the holy name. And he was organizing kirtan. He was organizing kirtan in the house of Srivas Pandit in Srivasanga. And there the Lord was chanting kirtan, sankirtan, night and day. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his householder pastimes in Navadvip, he was assisted by Advaita Acharya and Srivas Pandit. They were his main angas, spreading the holy name. But the local Brahmins saw, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wasn't considered he didn't consider caste. He didn't consider creed. Anyone could come and chant the holy name of Krishna regardless of caste. It doesn't matter where they were born or what they were doing. And the local caste Brahmins, they felt threatened, right? Because the caste system was the basis of their income. They felt that this Nimai Pandit is creating a problem. So they went to the Nawab, Hussain Shah, and they complained. Before these Hindus, they weren't following anything. But now because of this Nimai Pandit, they're all chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And they're becoming more involved in religion, they complain. So the Nawab, he became concerned. And he said, then you stop this Sankirtan, no more Sankirtan. Devotees came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, don't pay him any attention. Go on chanting. Just like sometimes we go on Harinam. I mean, the last time I was in St. Louis, I was out on Harinam, we were with the devotees. So this one police officer came. You know, they always have their name on there. So he's saying, you got to keep moving. You can't stay in one place. You got to move. This is a place where there's a lot of people, restaurants. It's a night place. So we were chanting. He said, it's an ordinance. You can't stay in one place. You have to move. He was a black police officer. I said, okay, we'll do what you say. We'll move. We'll keep chanting, though, but we'll move. You say it's an ordinance. And I said, but officer, and I forget what his name is. He said, I'm not an officer, I'm a sergeant. I said, oh, excuse me, sergeant, whatever. I said, there were ordinances at one time down south that black people couldn't vote. They were ordinances, right? But those ordinances were wrong, because everyone should have the right to vote, regardless of their color, right? He said, yes. The same way, we're practicing our religion, and there's freedom of religion in this country. You can't abstract that. Even if there's an ordinance, the ordinance is wrong. You know, we had some Indian devotees with us. You know, that's basically who comes to the temples now in America. So when they heard me talking to the cop like that, they were like, oh, really? But after that, they didn't bother us. We go, we chant, no difficulty. That's on Del Mar, near a university called Washington University. So the kirtan was being obstructed by the Nawab, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had heard that the men of Nawab Hussain Shah came and broke the mridanga. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, okay, let us go. We'll go to the house of the Nawab Hussain Shah, and organized 100,000 people, so many mridangas, cartels, big chanting in the night with torches. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama. And when they came to the Nawab Hussain Shah's house, the kirtan party was so fired up, they began to tear down his house. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped them. He said, no, don't do like that. And the Nawab came out from the house, and they discussed, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed him on the basis of Quran the importance of chanting and vegetarianism, in the sense that we have to honor the poor animals. So like this they discussed, and the king was convinced. He was convinced. He was convinced by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, effulgence. And he declared that from now on, the Sankirtan parties will never be disturbed. And even to this day, when there were riots all over India, this was way back in just after the Babri Masjid, 1980, 88 or 89? 90? 92. 1992. There were riots here in Bombay. I remember we stayed up all night, Krishna Murari, and we had sticks, and we could see that in by the Mahim church, they have all these stacks of bamboos. They lit them on fire, and we could see the fire from the top of the Gurukul. Fires everywhere. People were being killed, right? And we were roaming Hare Krishna land. We had our blue jeans on and sticks, in case they came. But nothing happened in Mayapur. There was no riot. Everything was peaceful there. Muslims didn't. They're all the descendants of the Chand Kazi, I suppose. Even to this day, in his samadhi, Chand Kazi samadhi in Mayapur, is a place where the devotees visit in parikrama every time. And there's two trees. There's a champak tree, and there's a neem tree. They've kind of grown together. and it's referred to as the Chankazi Samadhi. The neem tree resembles Mahaprabhu, and the champak tree, the Chankazi. They're there together. So by this Sankirtan movement, all the differences on the bodily concept of life can be removed. And regardless of their religion, people can all live peacefully. If you think that the name Krishna or Ram is sectarian, then you chant any name of God, as long as it's a bona fide name of God, and you will get the results. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, once in ecstasy, was chanting the name of the gopis. And his students, there were boys his same age, They began to criticize, why you're chanting the names of the gopis? You should be chanting the name of Krishna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he was disturbed by their foolishness, he chased them all away. He said that I came here to deliver the fallen souls. But if they don't have respect, then I won't get the result. I'll get the opposite result. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered that I'll take sannyas. Right? Because in the interest of delivering the people in those days, people would give proper respect to sannyasis. Even today, there's respect given to sannyasis. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even though by that time his father had passed away, his mother was alone, and he had a young wife. He was 24, and Vishnu Priya was hardly 16 years old. Still, he decided to take sannyas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one night he left his house, he went to a village, and from that village he crossed the Ganga and then went to the place of Keshava Bharati and took sannyas. That village is known as, from where he left, is known as Nirdhoy. No mercy. He left that place, no mercy. Then after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, he wanted to go to Vrindavan. He was absorbed in the ecstasy of love for Krishna, and he was wandering in Radhadesh. Radhadesh means the place where the Ganga doesn't flow. And Lord Nityananda, seeing the ecstasy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, spoke to some cowherd boys, some boys that were tending cows. And he told them, if Mahaprabhu comes this way, you direct him to the Ganga, but tell him it's the Jamuna. So Mahaprabhu came and he saw the cowherd boys and immediately thought of Vrindavan. Cowherd boys of Vrindavan. And he asked them, where is the Vrindavan? And he said that, they pointed to the Ganga and they said, there's the Jamuna. It's in Vrindavan. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went there in ecstasy and began bathing in the Ganga, thinking it was the Jamuna. And just that time, Advaitacharya came in a boat. And Advaitacharya, as soon as Mahaprabhu saw Advaitacharya, he said, what are you doing here in Vrindavan? He said, wait a minute. Lord Nityananda has tricked me. This is not Vrindavan. And Advaitacharya said, my dear Lord, wherever you are, that is Vrindavan. Please take this dry cloth and come in the boat, I'll take you for my house for prasada. So Lord Chaitanya went with Advaitacharya, and he went to his house, and Advaitacharya called Mother Sachi, who was very heartbroken to see that the beautiful hair of her son Nimai had been shaven, and she took the opportunity to cook for the Lord while he was there at the house of Advaitacharya. And she made one request, that you please make your base in Jagannath Puri, because people are always coming and going from Jagannath Puri, and we'll get some information about you from time to time. So Mahaprabhu agreed, and he stayed there. And the devotees kept requesting him to extend his stay. But one morning, he got up and just started walking to Jagannath Puri. And all the devotees fainted in separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, lamented. But some devotees went, Lord Nityananda also, they went with Mahaprabhu. And they traveled, in those days, no trains, no buses. They traveled by foot. They were walking. Walking. They came to Ramuna, Baleswar district, Ramuna. And there they related the story of Kirchor Gopinath. How the Gopinath Tidi had kept Kir for Madhavinda Puri. And then they went on to towards Jagannath Puri. From there, they saw the Sakshi Gopal Didi, and there they remembered the pastime of how Gopal came from Vrindavan to bear witness for the Brahmin and became famous as Sakshi Gopal. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they moved on towards Jagannath Puri. And at some point, Lord Nityananda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had fainted in ecstasy, and Lord Nityananda picked up his danda, broke it in half and threw it in the river. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he awoke from his ecstasy, he asked, "Where's my danda?" And Nityananda said, "Well, when you fell down, you fell on top of it and you broke it." So Mahaprabhu was very disturbed. "I have no possession in this world, only that, and you didn't take care. Now I won't travel with you." And he went by himself to Jagannath Puri. He went to Jagannath Puri, and when he got to Jagannath Puri, he saw Lord Jagannath. And as soon as he saw the Lord, he fainted in ecstasy. You know, you can just imagine if somebody was in the temple room right here and they fainted in front of Radharas Bihari, we'd probably call an ambulance or, security guard, right? So the same thing happened. They called the security guard. And it just so happened that one scholarly person was there at the time, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he resisted the security guards from disturbing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he had noticed something about this sadhu, saintly person, sannyasi. And he saw by his symptoms that he was exhibiting ecstatic symptoms of love of Godhead. So he ordered some persons to take Mahaprabhu to his house. And there he put a piece of cotton just below his nose. And he saw there was very slight breeze that was coming from the Lord's breath, and he saw that this was a symptom of bhava, that is very, very rare in anyone. Just that time, the devotees that had traveled with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they arrived in Puri, and they had met Gopinath Acharya, who was a brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he brought them to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and they performed kirtan. Hare Krishna! Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revived his consciousness by hearing the kirtan. He became awake, and he was indebted to he expressed his indebtedness to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Oh, you saved me. Thank you. And Gopinath Acharya, he knew the position of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he was the Supreme Lord. So he was trying to convince his brother-in-law, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that this is not just an ordinary saintly person, that this is the Supreme Lord. So they had a back and forth discussion. And in the discussion, Sarvabhauma was listening but not ready to accept. He was thinking, this very young sannyasi, and he's could be carried away by the waves of Maya anytime. But he was very attracted by him. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was thinking that I'll instruct him, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was such a learned scholar that sannyasis, even though he was a householder, would come to him and learn Vedanta. He was such a learned, such a famous scholar. And he was actually from Navadvip, so Vidyanagar. So he was attracted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was thinking, he's from the Bharatiya Sampradaya of sannyasis, which is on the lower side. By my instructions, I'll elevate him to a higher level of sannyas, the Saraswati level of sannyas. That's what he was thinking. So he approached Mahaprabhu to instruct him in Vedanta, and Mahaprabhu said, yes, I can learn from you. So they sat down, and for 7 days, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was discussing Vedanta. Mahaprabhu was listening, but for 7 days he never asked any question. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was thinking, is he understanding what I'm saying? He's not asking any question. So he said, are you understanding? And Mahaprabhu replied, yes, I understand very well Vedanta, but I don't know what you're talking about. And Sarvabhauma, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to explain actual Vedanta to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he explained it so nicely and so concisely and so clearly that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya remembered the discussion that he had with his brother-in-law, Gopinath Acharya. And he was inclined, but still not 100%. So after listening to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, can you explain, he asked him, the Atmarama verse from Srimad Bhagavatam? I heard that you have some unique explanation. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, yes, but first you explain it. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, being a great scholar, he explained the Atmarama verse in 9 different ways. Right? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he began to explain the Atmarama verse in 64 different ways, without touching the 9 different ways of Sarvabhauma. Then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya realized, this is no ordinary person. This must be the Supreme Lord. So he fell at his feet, he surrendered, and Chaitanya manifested to him, Lord Chaitanya manifested first his 4-arm form, and then he manifested his 2-arm form as Lord Krishna to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And from that time, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave up all his impersonal understanding of the absolute truth and became a devotee of Krishna. After some time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wanted to go traveling. He wanted to go to South India and preach Krishna consciousness. But the devotees there in Puri would always request him, okay, you can go, but now the rainy season's coming after. No, Janmastami's coming after. Kartik's coming after. Always they were delaying his trip. But one day he said, no, now I'll go. Then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, okay, if you go, at least take one person with you. And when you are traveling in South India, there's one very good devotee of Krishna there named Ramananda Roy. You should meet him. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed. And he went traveling in South India. And wherever he went, he was delivering the people, getting them to surrender to Krishna, become devotees of Krishna, and to chant the holy name of Krishna. Hare Krishna!
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare.
And on his trip, he came upon Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy was a government official, like a governor in the service of the king, and he was surrounded by soldiers and other officers and ministers. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met him, they were both filled with ecstasy and they embraced. Realizing that the others wouldn't understand, they sat down and began to discuss topics of Krishna consciousness. And Ramananda Roy was suggesting many things. In the beginning he was talking about Varnashram, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not accept it, and then finally Ramananda Roy came to the goal of life is to hear and chant topics about Krishna. And this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted. And Ramananda Roy went on to explain many intimate things regarding the philosophy and Krishna's Leelas in Vrindavan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the end of it, he said, you should come to Jagannath Puri, and we can always enjoy discussing pastimes of Krishna there. And later on, Ramananda Roy, he did that. He took retirement. He got a pension from the king, and he spent his time in Jagannath Puri with Lord Chaitanya, and he was one of the three devotees, 3.5 devotees actually, that were the intimate devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya had 3.5 devotees. He didn't discuss the intimate pastimes of Krishna with the public. For the public, it was the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Sankirtan, and Prasadam. Right? But he did discuss the intimate pastimes with his intimate devotees. Ramananda Roy was one of them. The other was Swarup Damodar, Sikhi and Sikhi sister. So 3.5. What happened to women's liberation? 3.5. Anyway, then that's another topic. So the Lord was passing his time there in Vrindavan very wonderfully with his intimate devotees and performing Sankirtan. And the king, Maharaj Prataparudra, he very much wanted to have darshan of the Supreme Lord. He had great faith in Lord Chaitanya, and he approached the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, but whenever they approached the Lord was very strict. I won't see any king. I'm a sannyasi. Not for me to meet persons that are simply interested in, pounds and shillings, and they have to deal with so many things. So the king was very disheartened. But when the Lord saw that during the Rath Yatra festival, the king had taken a humble position and he was sweeping the road in front of Lord Jagannath as a menial servant of Lord Jagannath, then the Lord's attitude towards the king changed. So much so that the Lord met with King Pattaparudra in the Ballava Gardens during the Rath Yatra, and he bestowed his mercy on him. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to visit Vrindavan, and on the way he stopped in Varanasi on his way to Vrindavan, and there Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met his two devotees, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar. They were living there in Varanasi. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was taking prasadam in their house, and one time they met him and they were very disturbed because they had heard the criticism by the Mayavadi sannyasis in Varanasi of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, saying that he's a sentimentalist, he's only chanting and dancing and he's not studying Vedanta. So they came to complain. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he only smiled. Right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, later on, there was an invitation to come and meet the Mayavadi sannyasis, and generally Prabhupada says in the purport of Chaitanya Charitamrita that Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, they don't take association from the Mayavadis. They keep separate. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised Mukunda because he sometimes would go to do kirtan with the Mayavadis. But Lord Chaitanya accepted the invitation, and he met Prakashananda Saraswati. And Prakashananda Saraswati had so many followers, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just like he convinced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya about the real meaning of Vedanta, in the same way he convinced all the followers of Prakashananda Saraswati, and at the end of that meeting they were all chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. They were all convinced that the Supreme Lord is a person, Sri Krishna, Rajendranandana. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went on to Vrindavan, and in Vrindavan he visited all the holy places. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are unlimited. They're like the waves of the ocean. There's so many. It's not possible for me to even touch in a small way, but I'm trying to describe some things. In Vrindavan, he went to all the 12 forests of Vrindavan and visited all the holy places. And at that time, it was Magh. So his servant suggested that they go to Allahabad. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Allahabad during the Magh Mela. And there he met Vallabhacharya. Vallabhacharya brought Mahaprabhu to his house, which is across the Jamuna from the Sangam in Allahabad, in a place called Arail. Mahaprabhu went there. Vallabhacharya was so happy that the Lord had visited his house. He washed his feet and sprinkled it on the head of all of his family members. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also at that time visited the deity of Bindu Madhava, also known as Veni Madhava, and there he met Rupa Goswami. And then when he met Rupa Goswami, he discussed topics of bhakti and devotional service. Later on, Rupa Goswami wrote the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu based on the instructions that he got from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the Deshashvamedha Ghat in Allahabad, or now it's called Prayag, finally. They changed the name, Prayag. Right. For so many years we called it the Allahabad Kumbh Mela. So now it's the Prayag Kumbh Mela. Hari Bol. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from there he went back to Jagannath Puri. So many pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are there in Puri. Wonderful things. Again, he met Rupa Goswami, who was living with Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, because he was born in a Muslim family, wasn't allowed in the Jagannath Puri temple. Still to this day, they don't allow anyone but quote-unquote Hindus in the Jagannath Puri temple. They didn't even want to let Guru Nanak in the Jagannath temple because said he wasn't a Hindu. There's a nice story how Guru Nanak went to Puri and he was sitting by the ocean, and the Lord Jagannath appeared to the pujaris and said, "Call my devotee. He's there by the ocean." And they went and they saw Guru Nanak sitting there, and they said, "Come, Lord Jagannath is calling you." So from that day, the Sikhs are allowed in the Jagannath temple. Right? But Mahaprabhu was living there very nicely. Mahaprabhu's intention was, he was always in separation from Krishna, and Jagannath Puri is the place of developing that mood of separation from the Lord, service and separation, Viprilamba Bhava. That was the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he expanded that mood in Jagannath Puri all while he was staying there. This is the advanced devotees. They're always missing Krishna, looking for Krishna. The 6 Goswamis and the prayer to the 6 Goswamis says they were looking everywhere. Oh, where's Krishna? Where's the son of Nanda? They never claimed to have found Krishna, but they were always looking for Krishna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in that mood, in the mood of separation. So on this holy day of the Lord's appearance, we should remember Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We should chant more the holy name of Krishna and ask for his benediction, that we can inculcate in our lives the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is trying to teach us how to worship Krishna, how to develop love for Krishna. And if we can do that, then our lives will be successful, and at the end of this life, we'll be able to return home back to Godhead. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. You want to do more kirtan? Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna.